Morning, Sarge.
Morning, Mum. You got the message then?
Did. Finished at 12 last night.
Evening out.
School concert, my son's.
Go all right?
You like that sort of thing? Only that note on my doormat rather spoilt my evening.
I bet. Late turn CID contacted all your witnesses for you.
Oh, my goodness for that.
With one exception.
John Henderson.
That's right. Know where to find him.
The only one who does. He's the one Harry Brewster duffed up.
And he's got guts enough to stand up in court and say so.
Well, there are still some heroes left, even these days. Still, I've got him in hiding until he's needed. Got any idea where the DCI's tied up at the moment?
I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's expecting a visit from you.
Wouldn't you?
Hard luck.
You can say that again.
Still, be a nice restful day for you, hanging about in court.
Come.
Yes.
Pull up a chair. It's hard luck, Maggie.
Oh, that's what they're all saying.
Well, we don't run the courts, do we?
Oh, yes, but today of all days.
Yeah, I know.
Two cases brought forward that I expected to give evidence in tomorrow, not today.
Happens.
Oh, it might happen, but I don't have to like it. You know, sir, I might still make it.
For the briefing?
Yes, I'm sure I could.
You can't be. Not when you're in court.
Well, as sure as I can be of anything.
All right, convince me.
Bert Prendergast on first, right? Well, he'll plead.
Make history if he does.
So he's got to, hasn't he? If he's got any sense. Remember? We caught him backing his car out of the garage to go off for the weekend, and the boot was crammed full of gear from his last break-in, and it wasn't even his car.
So he's up on 2 counts, receiving and nicking the car.
Yes.
Right, nicking the car, he might plead, but the gear, no way. I'm terribly sorry, Your Honor. I admit I knocked off the car, but how was I to know there was all this gear in the boot?
Yes, but they'd put their luggage on top of it. Him and his girlfriend. She didn't want anything in the back seat in case it crushed her mink.
Yeah, well, he might find it a bit difficult talking his way out of that one. All right, you've convinced me.
Thanks, sir.
Of the possibility that you might get an early finish with Prendergast. Now, what about Brewster?
I should be out of the box about an hour after that starts.
And released?
Why not?
Well, that all depends on counsel.
Counsel is Simon Fox.
So?
I can flutter my eyelashes at him.
We talk about equality of the sexes.
To be here for that briefing, sir, I'd do anything.
Do you want me to tell Simon that?
It's still at 11:30, right?
On the dot.
I'll be here.
Maybe.
So you know what I went through for that art job?
I know.
It's mine.
No such word, Maggie. Not round here. You know that.
I got the tip-off from my own sources. I tracked down every one of those villains. I even found out where they were warehousing the stuff.
Yes, I know.
It'd be Bob Croft, wouldn't it? I mean, he'd take over if I couldn't make it.
It all depends upon availability. Now, you know that.
Oh, Bob Croft would make himself available, even if he has to murder the commissioner.
We've got to cover ourselves. Now, if you're not here, in this office, 11:30...
Would the world come to an end if I was 5 minutes late?
I can stretch it a bit. I know what it means to you, but not too far.
Thanks, sir.
I'm not promising anything.
No, I see that.
Maggie, one thing. Now, I know this art job could mean a lot of kudos for you, but if your evidence puts H. Brewster behind bars before he murders someone, you could earn yourself a medal.
I'll remember that.
Oh, Croft there? Put him on, would you?
Oh, thanks, Tony, for God's sake. No, do go. Mr. Henderson, Maggie Forbes. Look, Miss Henderson, I'm afraid that your case has been brought on a day early. Yes, well, it does sometimes happen with the court. Somebody decides to plead guilty after all, and everything else is moved forward. Look, I have a car on the way to pick you up. Can you be ready in time? No, believe me, Miss Henderson, you've got nothing to worry about. No, he can't touch you in court. Well, after today, he'll be put away for years. Yes, of course, I'm sure. Once the jury's heard your evidence. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I'll see you in court.
That, I take it, was Harry Brewster's victim.
Yeah, he's a very frightened one. Still, after today, all his worries will be over. You've heard, then, that I'm joining you in court today.
I heard.
Still, it shouldn't take long. Both mine are open and shut cases.
So's mine.
You brought something to read?
A beauty. A corpse on every page so far.
Oh, well, that should kill some time.
Ooh. When I'm sitting in the local pub waiting to be called on.
You should hang around in court if you can bear it, Tony. You pick out some interesting stuff that way.
You think so?
No, my dad does. He said it's better than the cinema and cheaper.
Be there today, will he?
Oh, yes, he'll be there. He says he'll hear my party piece, but if I know Dad, he'll suss out some nice juicy rape or indecent assault in another court, and he'll be out of the door before I'm out of the box.
Isn't it a waste of time?
Still working on that payroll job?
Yeah. And one day, like today, could make all the difference.
Join the club.
Why don't they plead guilty and get it over with?
Who?
All of them. Brewster, Bert Prendergast, that young tearaway in my case who robbed that old woman. Guilty as hell, the lot of them. It's a farce.
You're forgetting something, aren't you? Everyone is innocent until they're proved guilty.
They wouldn't be in the dock if they weren't guilty.
Yeah, we have still got to prove it.
You're not going over there now, are you?
Flutter my eyelashes.
Hey?
Nothing. Coming?
Not before I have to.
Listen, just tell him to hold it till I get there, okay, Tim? Thanks. Has Prendergast agreed to plead?
On the brink, Johnson thinks.
Oh, please God.
Big case, is it? Things you want to get away from?
Couldn't be bigger. Remember the Giorgione painting stolen from the Weinstein collection?
You haven't recovered it.
We will, this afternoon. Swoop starts at 12:30.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Who'll take over the case if you don't get away?
Bob Croft, probably. Give his eye teeth for it.
I can imagine. When's the briefing?
11:30. I've asked Russell to hold it for me. Simon, you won't need me for long, will you? In the Brewster case?
Seen the victim lately?
What's left of him?
Brewster's counsel won't push him too hard. If he has any sense.
How long do you think he'd be in the witness box?
About half an hour?
I go in next. So, if Bert Prendergast pleads 5 minutes, half an hour before I'm called in Brewster. Simon, you won't leave me for long, will you?
Have you out of the box in 10 minutes?
And released?
Well, I can't see why not. It's only evidence of arrest, isn't it?
Promise?
For you, anything.
Am I late?
It's a nice time.
Oh, you wouldn't believe the
Relax,
traffic.
get your breath. Your case isn't first, anyway.
Oh, thank God for that.
Yeah. How long do you reckon you'll be?
Oh, about an hour, I should think. Bert Prendergast might plead.
Oh, Bert, never.
Hard case, is he?
He always gives them a run for their money.
Our money.
You're right there.
You lost me.
British taxpayer, Dad. He's on legal aid again.
I don't believe it. Bert'll never plead.
Oh, he will this time if he's got any sense. I nicked him myself. I was just going off duty, out to dinner as it happened, and I got a tip-off.
Ma'am, who do I see about my evidence?
Oh, you're in luck. It's Simon. He's looking after both of us. So you're in good hands.
Both of us? What, 2 cases on the same day?
Yes. I'm hoping Brewster's case will go before lunch.
All right if I get a cup of tea?
I'll see you later.
Do you mean Harry Brewster might change his plea at the end of the prosecution case?
When he sees the prime witness, yes.
Who's his counsel?
A man called Ryan. Haven't come up against him before.
Well, what does he say? I mean, about changing the plea?
Just, I'll see.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll have the judge with us, though. It's old Ransom. He always gets through the list like a dose of salt.
You'll be through in about an hour, then. Good.
Why?
Sussed out a beauty upstairs. Indecent assault.
Well, it's hardly worth coming down here, then, is it?
Oh, well, may as well listen to your piece as well. Don't start at 11:30.
Thanks, Dad.
What happened to the dinner?
What dinner?
The one you were going out to when you got the tip-off. Did he wait for you?
No.
No, they never do understand, do they?
They?
Outsiders.
No.
We must get together sometime. Swap hard luck stories.
Yes, let's.
Dinner?
If you'll risk being stood up.
Oh, I think so.
And, of course, as long as we're not on the same case at the time.
Yes, the defense could make quite something out of that, couldn't it?
Influencing a witness.
Collusion.
At least.
Well, if there ever is a time when we aren't,
And we both happen to be off duty at the time.
Yeah. Look, what about...
Prendergast, please.
Albert Prendergast, you stand charged on this indictment on 2 counts.
Oi!
Silence. If it please your honour. If it please your honour, if I may crave a moment.
Can you give me any idea of just how many moments, Mr. Johnson?
I really could not say, I'm afraid, your honour. If I may crave, perhaps, a short adjournment?
We have a very heavy list, Mr. Johnson. I think we should proceed with the next case.
As your honour pleases.
If, however, a convenient moment arises later.
I'm very much obliged, your honour.
Hard luck.
Well, I might still make it.
Harold Brewster, you stand charged on this indictment with causing grievous bodily harm with intent, contrary to Section 18 of the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. And the particulars of that offence are that you did, on the 27th day of September 1979, in the Spread Eagle public house, unlawfully and maliciously wound Robert Henderson with intent to do him some grievous bodily harm. How say you, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
The bugger asked for it, so I let him have it. I didn't mean to hurt him. It was self-defence. You can't hold me on self-defence, so can I go now?
Did Mr. Brewster read the statement?
He did?
And did he write the certificate at the end?
Yes. It's in his own handwriting. It reads as follows. I have been shown the above statement. I've been told I can correct, alter, or add anything I wish. This statement is true. I have made it of my own free will. It was duly signed by Mr. Brewster.
Thank you, Detective Inspector.
Just one moment, Inspector. There was just one point about your evidence that struck me. The time.
I'm sorry.
The defendant commenced making this statement at 4:23 a.m. and concluded it at 4:26.
That's right.
In 3 minutes?
Yes.
But of course the actual interview lasted considerably longer than that.
Yes.
That commenced at 2:19 a.m.
Yes.
And the incident, the affray in the public house during which the alleged wounding took place, occurred at about 10 minutes past 11 the night before.
Yes.
So, 3 hours had elapsed from the time of the alleged offence before the defendant was brought to the police station.
Yes.
Of course, you're well used to working at that hour of the night, aren't you, Inspector?
Yes.
More used to it than most of us, I should imagine. And a young, healthy, and if I may say so, very attractive woman like yourself probably wakes each morning alert, refreshed. Whereas most of us are hardly likely to be at our best at that hour, are we? Are we?
I'm sorry. I hadn't realized it was meant to be a question.
I prefer not to answer it. I'll not press it.
Perhaps you would like to rephrase your question, Mr. Rao.
My point, Your Honour, is quite simply that my client, like many of us, is hardly at his best at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It is a fairly self-evident point, Mr. Rao.
I'm obliged to Your Honour. So, having denied the charge for 2 hours, my client suddenly capitulated and signed a confession.
That's right.
At 4:23 a.m. At 4:10 a.m., the accused was offered and accepted a cup of tea. A cup of tea. Why did you offer my client a cup of tea, Inspector?
Because I was having one.
Ah. Your statement doesn't mention that. What exactly was said?
If I remember correctly, I think I said, would you like a cuppa?
And he accepted it?
Yes.
Was this before or after he'd requested the cigarette?
Cigarette?
Ah. There appears to be no reference to this incident in your statement, Inspector.
What incident?
My client distinctly remembers asking for a cigarette during the interview and being given one just before he was about to make his statement.
He may have done.
He may have done.
I don't remember.
Of course you don't. Why on earth should you? After all, no one can be expected to remember a thing like that after all this time, can they? Unless, of course, they have a particular reason for remembering every moment of that interview, as my client has.
It was a very long time.
Then, of course, that's the whole point of taking notes, isn't it, Inspector? At the time, when the incident is fresh in the memory.
We don't have to...
Your statement is not accurate, is it?
We do not have to record giving a cigarette. Only refreshments. It's a very trivial point.
To you, perhaps. Not to my client. Not at that hour of the morning? To a heavy smoker? And certainly not in those circumstances. Dragged out of bed down to the station, forced to leave his wife...
No force was used.
No. Of course not, Inspector. We all know that sort of thing doesn't happen in our police stations, does it? The rubber hoses, the knocking about.
No.
Of course, there are degrees.
If your client has any complaints to make, I suggest he makes them through the proper channels so they can be properly investigated.
But there are other ways of killing a cat than drowning it in cream, aren't there? Aren't there?
I'm sorry.
Would you like me to repeat the question again?
I didn't realize it was meant to be a question. Again.
I see. Did you offer my client a cream cake with that cup of tea and cigarette?
I'm afraid we don't run a luxury service.
No, I'm sure you don't. Particularly at that hour of the morning. Still, it must have been a very welcome cuppa. After all, he'd been woken up, dragged out of his bed, brought
No
down...
force was used.
No, we've already established that, haven't we? And we've also established that there are other ways of, shall we say, persuading someone to do what we want them to do.
We haven't established anything of the sort.
I do beg your pardon. I thought we had. Perhaps the shorthand writer could read back the passage in question.
No, that won't be necessary. I remember the passage in question very well. You were talking about cats and cream. We haven't established that either has any connection with this case.
I think it's for his honor and the jury to say what has a connection with this case. However, if you would prefer, again, that I did not pursue that point, of course I won't. Let's return to your very trivial point about the cigarette. Of course, a man in the defendant's position at that hour of the morning is very vulnerable, isn't he? Even something as trivial as a cigarette can assume great importance at that hour. He'd sell his soul for a cigarette, anything.
I doubt it.
No, there are other things which would be even more important, aren't there? Chance to see his wife, perhaps, who's waiting at home, sick with worry. But of course, that's not possible, is it? There are no visiting hours when you're interviewing a suspect. A cigarette is a poor substitute, perhaps, but very welcome.
Mr. Ryle,
Your Honor.
you have already established, I think, that a cigarette can be very welcome to a heavy smoker.
I'm obliged to Your Honor. I'm delighted my point is established. Inspector, if...
Yes.
Oh, I do apologize. I realize you have pressing business elsewhere, but I'm sure you'll appreciate this is also very pressing for my client. A man who's been coerced into signing a confession to a very serious crime.
That's not true.
I'm sorry.
He wasn't coerced into signing anything.
Oh, very well, if you prefer it. Bribed, a man who's been...
Bribed?
You very distinctly
With a
say...
cigarette?
We can't even be sure that it was just a cigarette, can we? You've already admitted one error in your statement. There could well be others. You could have
There are
offered
not.
anything for all we
No.
know. A cup of coffee,
It's not a
even,
question of...
cream
He
cake.
won't touch our coffee. He says it always tastes like...
Your Honor, a purely legal point.
Yes, Mr. Ryan. Members of the jury, A purely legal point has arisen, and I must ask you to withdraw to the jury room for a moment while counsel address me. On a purely legal point.
Chops and tomato sauce.
I suppose you think that's funny.
That's Mr. Pickwick, love. You won't go far in this business without coming across Mr. Pickwick.
Why don't you go over and tell him about Mr. Pickwick? Maybe he'd appreciate it.
Well, you can't win them all, Maggie.
Yes, but to let him off just because I was
I still don't get it.
stupid.
Just because she said that about the coffee.
He'd been down to the station before, hadn't he? So he'd got form, see? And once the jury knows that...
But he hasn't got any form. No one would testify against him before.
No, he's been sussed. That's all Ryan needed. If he hadn't pulled this off, it'd have been on to police harassment. Have to hand it to him.
Oh, I'd like to hand it to him. I'd like to... If that jumped-up smart aleck ever happens to be on a pedestrian crossing as I drive up, so help me.
Nice to have met you, Inspector. Sorry about that.
I'd arrange protection for Henderson if I were you.